YouTube, and I should know better. There we go. Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm back again. And yeah, we are going to be wrapping up the this specific story tonight. So if you're just tuning in, it's your first time tuning in, you picked a very bad time. I'm just gonna say. Um, it's gonna be well, I was gonna say it would be a bit of a long one, but there's only two chapters. However, one of the chapters is pretty chunky, so it's gonna take a little while for me to get through it. Um, yeah, and then after tonight, I will be taking a break for a little while, for a month. While For those of you who just found out, I'll be taking a break for a month while I get ready to do some edits, some change some scenes, just a tweak here, a tweak there. And also, I'm going to be working on the map. For those of you who have seen it earlier, I need to do the map. Anyway, the map at whoop, there we go. Have to go backwards. Yeah, that's the map, but I'm going to be redoing it, making it a little more fantasy map looking like it should. And then I'll be releasing the book later on. So that's going to all happen. But for now, let me just jump into reading the last two chapters of the Saga of Haram. So when last we left our hero, his, I want to say girlfriend, not really girlfriend. They're friendly-ish. She'd just gotten kidnapped by a demon, and so now he is off to try and rescue her. I Jury's still out on how I feel. But I think it's going to probably be answered in these next two chapters, which are the final two chapters of the story. And depending on how this goes, that's the nice thing about being the editor of somebody who is not here to defend themselves. Is that if I really have an issue with it, I can rewrite things. But we'll see. Too soon to say. Let us see how the rest of the story goes. So, I present now Chapter 31 of the Saga of Haram. But coffee first. Yuga was not pleased. He was a man of action, not careful forethought, and his sword was 2 inches out of the scabbard by the time Haram was half finished his somewhat jumbled explanation. Haram himself felt a sense of desperation and grudged every moment it took to make explanations. He was himself very close to drawing his own blade and taking his chances about being able to kill every man of Yuga's band, then going on his own. Going on his own. Yeah. Only the knowledge in his mind that it would not stop with Yuga allowed him to maintain some measure of calm. If he could deal with Yuga and his men, not necessarily a certainty, he would have to answer to the local magistrate, which would mean more delay and troubles with a bare blade that a bare blade would not solve. Listen, he said urgently. What kind of tomfool would I be bringing such a story to you if it were not true? Yuga was not. Yuga was not easily mollified, and a shrewd man might come with just such a tale, trusting in every improbability to convince others. I've heard tales of you, and I would not trust a man who spent time with goblins. This is a new attitude towards his time with the goblins, one Harem had not considered before. But this was neither the time nor the place to argue the merits of the notion. Listen, you have a wizard with you. You have a wizard with you, I see. I'm certain he knows some sort of spell to tell the truth from falsehood. Let him test me and see if I'm lying. Why bother the man? Why do we not simply begin by taking you apart until you tell us a truth that a man can believe? Harem drew a deep breath, and by main force kept his hand away from his sword hilt. One more try, then. Yuga, you have heard the stories of Harem Grimface, probably all painted larger than life and great in color, and in great color. But has anyone ever suggested that Harem Grimface could not or would not fight if a fight was necessary? If a fight starts here and now, there will be dead men on the floor before it is done. And how many besides me are you willing to see die? Why not let your wizard do what he can before you begin something where the outcome might be in doubt? He was careful not to make any statement regarding the fact that Yuga was directly in front of him and would be the first target of any attack he might make. That could possibly be construed as a challenge to Yuga's courage, one to which the most likely response would be an immediate attack. The wizard, a tall and slender man of a breed Harem had never seen before, with dark hair and an aquiline nose, stepped forward. There's some sense to what he says, Yuga. I could tell if he's lying, and even if he's got some kind of spell to counter my truth detection, I could tell that too. Let me have a try, and you can always cut each other to pieces afterward. Yuga, his eyes still on Harem, released his sword and let it slide back into the scabbard. So then, Opticaz, do your spelling. His expression said all Harem needed to know about what might happen if the spell said he was lying. Opticaz muttered some words quietly, and Harem felt a tingling all over. The hair on the back of his neck stood up. His eyes began to feel dry. What city are we in? Asked the wizard. Shilka, answered Harem. The wizard put up a hand to forestall Harem's answer in return. Please bear with me. This is a necessary part of the spell. Now, what is your name? Harem. Have you hunted the Grizzlack? Yes. Ah, fine. Now, tell us one more story about how Teriel was taken. So Harem went through the tale again, rather more calmly than the first time, though inwardly he was impatient at every moment's delay. When he had done, Opticaz muttered a few words again, then turned to Yuga. He tells the truth, Yuga. It happened as he told it. Humph, grunted Yuga. And what do you plan now, Harem of the Grim Face? I think, first of all, I need to find a seer and ask what this means. From what little I know of seers, I think I will need something that belonged to Teriel for him to seek her by. We'll bring her helmet here. She wore it enough that it ought to serve. We'll have to wait until morning, though. Harem was nigh ready to scream with frustration, but he knew Yuga was right. If they woke up a seer at this time of night, He would not likely be in a good frame of mind to be helpful, and Harem was beginning to suspect that they would need all the help they can get. He finally took a seat with his back against the wall, certain he would not sleep at all. But some of the other patrons of the inn swore that they'd tie him down if he did not cease pacing. Then suddenly it was dawn, and he lifted a groggy head from his chest and remembered what had happened. Hiram looked across the table at the seer. He was of Rahassan, one of the segment of that people who seemed to have dwarvish and bleh. Let me try that again. He was of Rahassan. When he was what? It's not the words, it's me. He was of Rahassan, one of the segment of that people who seemed to have some dwarvish ancestry, for he was short and stalk, broad-faced, with a dark and heavy beard covering his chin. The walls of his shop were covered with charts, some carefully done with colored inks on parchment, others seeming to be little more than rough sketches on bits of wood, leather, or tree bark. Pardon me. Hiram wondered briefly if all or any of these had any function at all, save to impress the seer's customers. Rather than telling the whole story and asking for an interpretation, Hiram passed the helmet across the table and asked, "The one who wore this, what can you tell me of her?" As the interpreter translated, the, the seer was turning the helmet in his hands, holding it lightly but firmly between his palms, and looking, not at it, but at Hiram. Then he stiffened, his eyes rolled up in his head. Hiram automatically reached for him, but the seer's assistant, a very young a very young boy, laid a hand on Hiram's arm and spoke. The interpreter translated. He says not to worry, the seer is in his trance, and he sees what he will see. Only wait. Then the boy himself busied himself with mixing herbs in a pot and heating water in a small copper vessel. For some time, nothing happened. Only the buzz of the town outside the dim shop. Hiram, despite the despite the assurances of the despite the assurances of the seer's attendant, was on the point of attempting to get the seer's attention when the man suddenly stirred. He spoke in a dry and gravelly voice, very quickly, so that the interpreter was hard put to keep up. Oh boy. He says that this is a matter of the gods, and that mortals had best not interfere. He says that there was a bargain between the god of lies and Vistak, the god of the Grizzalak, for the god of lies was prevented from touching his prey, while the Vistak was angry with you and wished to cause you as much pain as possible. He says that the woman who was the prey of the god of lies, and that he has her once more and will not let her go. How could he have her? She has an amulet to protect him from her. How could he have her? She had an amulet to protect her from him. There was a pause while the interpreter put this to the seer, who then responded. Sometimes the gods meet and make bargains. The amulet protected her against the god of lies, but was not so effective against Vistak, and given time, the god of lies will be able to overwhelm the strength of the amulet. Is there any way I can find her? Anything at all I can do? The seer was quiet for a while again, staring through the walls into some distance. Then he spoke. Hard, hard, the task to be done. No mortal can do it alone. And will any god interfere? There is a grove of oak trees and a druid, and that is all. That is all? What message is that? That is all the message. If you do not know what it is meant, I fear I cannot help you. Haram stood. I understand a little, but I am not sure that it makes any sense. The grove of oaks and the druid I think I know, but what the druid might be able to do, I cannot say. Sorry. Amazing, amazing audio. I know. Sorry about that, guys. Okay. I just had to add in dialogue tags. One more dialogue tag. There we go. Haram stood. I understand a little, but I'm not sure it makes any. Oh, yeah, make sure it makes any sense. The grove of oaks and the druid, I think I know, but what the druid might be able to do, I cannot say. The boy brought a cup of infused herbs to the seer, who began to drink in careful sips. Haram paid the fees of the seer and the interpreter, and then they all went out. Yuga shook his head. I've thought on any number of things, but this is a business of the gods. Tariel was a companion, but how does one fight against the gods themselves? Hiram was too full of thoughts and conjectures on the seer's words to spend even a moment's inward sneering at Yuga's protestations of comradeship. Out in the street, he turned to Dareth Gann. I plan to do what I can for Tariel. I'll know not to come. The seer's words mean something to you. What is it? You recall what I told you about the god of lies, about our first brush with him? When he took Tariel away, he found us outside a grove of trees when the druid Korennis lives. Where the Nope, that says when, not when, although that'd be a unique and interesting thing. When he lives. That should probably say where, not when. Wrong 5W. If there's a druid or a grove of oaks to be connected to this story, that would be it. What it means exactly, I can't say. But I think I'd better go there without delay. Korennis may be able to tell us more. We go to Shundakar then? I go to Shundakar. I'd not expect you to fight any gods on my account. The half-elf smiled. If I let you leave me behind, what might happen to me? I broke my leg so as to be ready and waiting for you in that little village. If I let you go on without me, could I expect some broken ribs as well? Haram smiled. I'm ashamed to admit I'm glad you feel that way. I dislike the thought of this, gods and all, but I dislike it even more without a friend at my back. Shall we go to the harbor and see about a passage to Eridar? There were several ships in the harbor, all of them intending, eventually, to sail to Eridar. The soonest departure was 2 days, however, and for most of the time stretched to a week or even two. Haram, shriving, shriving? I don't know. I don't know. I thought it was striving. Could be shriving. I will find out later. Haram, striving to conceal the desperation he felt, began bargaining with the captain of the Lady Winchester. Wait, the Lady Windchaser to leave immediately. Captain Eric Hiffon, a squat and swarthy native of Rahassan, shook his head. Couldn't leave today if I were to want to, he declared in the tongue of Eridar, heavily accented. Crews scattered, wave God knows where, over half the inns and whorehouses of the town. Day after tomorrow is best I can do. And I have to be in Ifan Sur as soon as possible, and can't wait that long. Captain, I'm sure a man such as yourself would never let himself be caught so short as to be unable to leave when he wanted to. And I'd be willing to pay for the ability to leave tomorrow morning. You think so, do you? Now who's telling you I work miracles? And just from curiosity, what were you thinking of paying me to work this little wonder? 20 silver ponies. May the spirit of Astron help me. I wouldn't sail across the harbor for 20 silver ponies, boy. Suppose we say 6 gold. Suppose we assume that no one has written rich fool across my forehead. 22 ponies. With various protestations of poverty and accusations of inconscionable greed, the bargain was eventually made that they would be transferred to Ifa and Sor and provided with meals during the trip all for a price that Haram knew to be somewhat high. He knew, however, that speed was important and that the captain had some sense of that himself, so the seaman was able to press for a higher tariff than he might have otherwise done. You spent practically everything we had expostulated. Expostulated? Really? Oh boy. Don't know why that had to be in there. That's the most fancy dialogue tag ever. You spent practically everything we had, moaned Dareth Gann as they returned to the inn for their gear. What will we live on after we reach Ifan Sur? Borath has been holding my money for me. I expect we'll be able to get at least enough from him to take us on to Shandakar. And what then? We're fighting against gods, but your only plan is to get to the Druid's Grove? You're right, but it is a slender reed on which to lean a plan. Sorry, you're right. It is a slender reed on which to lean a plan. But it's the only hint we have. But I do know this. I will simply I will not simply let this matter drop. If there's something to be done, I shall find it and do it. Tran and Viron help me. A beam of sunlight suddenly flashed through the clouds and shone on Haram. For a moment his armor gleamed like silver, then the sunbeam was gone. Haram stood for a moment, blinking, wondering. Was it an omen? Had Tran and Viren heard him? The trip to Ifan Sur was a long one, long enough that Haram had to continually force himself not to think about what might be happening tutorial in the meantime. He succeeded at this by putting himself into the same state he'd been in when he had been a prisoner of the goblins. At that time, he kept his mind only on his sword, waiting for the chance to take it and make his escape. Now he concentrated on the on the oak grove in Corinus, to the exclusion of well nigh everything else. He barely noticed that the sailors had begun to walk carefully around him, and that none of them spoke to him any longer. If he were in the way, someone would speak quietly to Dareth Gann, asking him to I don't know what that means. Asking him to make his companion move, but they did not speak to Haram. After they had left the ship at Ifan Sur, Dareth Gann said to Haram, "Well, this will be another addition to the story of Haram of the Grim Visage for sure." "Truly?" asked Haram absently. "How so?" "How so? No, I suppose you have no idea of how you've been these past few days. Believe me, if anyone had thought they'd seen you with a grim face before, they'd not really seen the true item." They went first to Vorath's Inn, a fine, large building with a colorful sign above the door, proclaiming it to be the Dragon's Hoard. Haram smiled slightly. "So, the dragon is remembered even after his death." Vorath was busy overseeing the inn, watching the servants in their tasks and keeping an eye out to trouble them from the customers. The inn had apparently already become a favorite for venturers. With such custom quarrels, brawls, and outright battles, and with such custom, quarrels, brawls, and outright battles were not unknown. Borath had been an adventurer himself, and could usually predict when a quarrel was about to become more serious, and would step in to prevent trouble. When Haram came in, Vorath was calming a dispute between an axe-wielding dwarf and a rather inebriated Shandakranian half-breed. The Shandakranian was speaking in a slurred voice, but audibly for all that. "Dwarves? Best use for any dwarf I've met is in a with a touchy pride of all of that race, said nothing but reached for his axe, stepping forward into a suddenly widening ring. Clearly, Vorath had been watching the situation well before it had begun to develop. He placed himself in the dwarf's path and began to speak in conciliatory tones. "Now, Master Dwarf, you know we don't want any trouble in here, and think on it. If everyone was challenged for words spoken in their cups, the world would sadly be short of people." The dwarf was not easily calmed, though. "If some grinning apes were to be held account for words spoken in their cups, the world would be a much more polite place. Look at him, smirking behind your shoulder. He spoke as he did, knowing you would protect him from me. But I am determined to have my satisfaction. Step aside, Vorath." Vorath took a glance over his shoulder, where the Shandakranian was indeed grinning drunkenly at the scene he had caused. The innkeeper turned back to the dwarf again, clasping his hands in front of himself, the very image of a servile innkeeper. "Ah, but Master Dwarf, why should we let such a fool as this spoil our pleasures? Listen." And suddenly, with no warning whatsoever, Vorath spun and drove a fist into Shandakranian's belly. As the man bent over, his face encountered Vorath's knee, coming up swiftly and decisively. The Shandakranian collapsed on the floor. Vorath, scarcely breathing hard, turned his attention back to the dwarf. Now, Master Dwarf, it would be unsporting of you to carve the fool to bits while he is unconscious. Mind you, I'm not putting a price on your pride, but I'd be willing to buy you a nice mug of ale if you'd like to go back to your table. It was clear that the dwarf was not altogether mollified, but he also recognized that dismembering an unconscious drunk would do serious damage to his own reputation. So he allowed himself to be led back to the table where one of Vorath's inn servants was already pouring the ale. Vorath went back to his counter. As he was going, he saw Haram. Haram, by Tran and Viren! It is Haram, for certain! Welcome back! And a good evening to you as well, Vorath. Vorath, this is my companion, Dareth Gan. Dareth Gan, this is Vorath, in whose band I once traveled. As a companion of Haram, you are welcome to my inn, Dareth Gan. How long do you plan to stay, Haram? Just for one night, Vorath. We're in something of a rush. Indeed. You'll have time to sit and talk for a moment, won't you? Dun dun dun. Yes, for a little while, but we must leave early in the morning, and we'll have to be early to bed. So then, just a moment. He turned toward his assistant, who was off in a corner. Graf, watch things for a bit, will you? I have an old friend to talk to. When the three of them were finally seated with a mug of ale each, Vorath turned to Haram and said, Well then, what is this task that brings you in and out of the city, rushing like a rushing wind? And so quickly, you can't even stop to visit old friends and companions? Haram hesitated a moment before speaking, then said, It is something of a long story, Vorath, and it goes back to the days before we met. You recall me telling you that when I was with Orit's band, we rescued a girl named Teriel from the God of Lies? Drauha has never forgiven nor forgotten that. I'm sure it's forgiven. I think he may have even had something to do with the goblins finding us that morning. After I left you here, I eventually made my way to Helen Howdress and found that Teriel had left some time ago to become a adventurer herself. So I decided to seek her out and pass on a message from her father. He continued to tell the rest of the tale, the burning of the Grizzlack temple, the happenings in Shilka, and the hints given by the seer. So you see, I'm on my way to the Druid's Grove, and I stopped here to replenish my wallet for the trip. Vorath looked around uneasily. I could leave Gareth in charge while I come with you. You seriously think that the Druid will be able to help you against Draha? No, no. No, Haram protests. I didn't come to you seeking your company on this journey. I am on a quest, the outcome of which is far from certain. The seer gave no foretelling, merely hints of what I should seek, and the danger into which I go is not one to which I would drag any other person, no matter how willing. By Tren and Viron, I have no wish to have your death on my conscience, Vorath. What can I do for you then? To be sure, you can stay the night if you wish, but there must be some other way I can aid you. There is. I told you that we came away from Shilka in something of a hurry, and we spent a good deal in order to come quickly. I left much my money with you here, and I need to fill my purse before I leave. Money? For certain, there is money available. I could let you have 20 silver ponies now if you wish. If you wait until morning, I could give you twice that, or more. We will have to wait until for morning in any case, since we will need to buy provisions for the trip. And I may wish to talk to Athal Kaon as well. Now, all business having been dealt with, how goes it with you, Vorath? Vorath then recounted his various adventures in the process of setting up the inn, all the things that had never occurred to him before he began, but were in fact vitally important. He told tales of how one or two merchants tried to cheat him out of a matter of supplies. But when he and Tano strapped the swords on to go visiting the merchants, the shortages suddenly suddenly made up and the overages suddenly disappeared. After that, they found it very useful to mention their dealings with the merchants. In their dealings with merchants, the fact that they had been venturers and that they had on occasion been hired to hunt and kill bandits and thieves. In the morning, Haram and Dareth Gan went out to purchase supplies. They visited Val Keon's establishment, which was becoming dusty and dingy, filled with odd looking jars and bottles, herbs, spices, and reagents hanging from the rafters, stuck on shelves in a seemingly erratic fashion. Athal Kaon greeted Haram warmly, but when Haram explained that he was bound, where he was bound, and why, the mage's face turned grave. A bad business fighting against gods, he said. I know that, but what else can I do? If there's any chance at all to rescue her, I must take it. Yes, I suppose you must. Is there aught I can do for you, other than ensuring my amulet is strong enough? I think not. More dialogue tags. Just give me a second here. Okay. Dun, dun, dun. What of your companion? Will you buy an amulet for him? No, this task is for me. There's little hope of it coming out alive, and I will not drag someone else into such danger. No, I will accompany you, Harem, protested Dareth Gan. You will not. This is my task, and I will bring no one else to suffer my fate with me. Don't be a fool, Harem. You heard what Cora said? I am meant to be with you. I will come with you. How do you propose to you at your destination? You're not the only one who knows the roads of Eridar, you know. Harem stood quietly for a moment, then said, well, if you must come, then come. But it'll be more dangerous than anything we have done hitherto. And what sort of companion would I be if I only accompanied you when there was no danger? Athal Kaon is smiling. So then, another amulet for your companion then? When he had finished the amulet, the mage gave it to Dareth Gan with the warning. This will help you protect against the this will help protect you against the god of lies, but do not rely on it altogether. The full strength of a god is considerable, and if he should exert himself, the amulet will then fail. But in general, it will do what it is meant to do. He turned to Harem. Harem, this sounds very much like a trap, set to catch you. Teriel is the bait to bring you into the territory of Droha, and when you arrive, he will be waiting. If that is the case, why did not the god of Grislac take the two of us? Asked Harem. Thalkaon shrugged. Perhaps it is part of the plan that you should run free for a while, thinking to rescue Teriel so that your despair would be the greater when you fall into his hands. And perhaps it's merely that your amulet is stronger than Teriel's, so that the stock could not take the two of you. Who knows? Who knows? The road to Helen Howdress was long. Since they had no idea what they might meet when they arrived at the Druids' Grove, they could make no real plans. As they neared the town, Dareth Gann asked, "Will you stop to speak to her father?" "No, what could I tell him? That his daughter was once again taken by the god of lies, and that less than half a plan I have something less than half a plan to rescue for her rescue? I think it best if we simply pass through. When all is done, if we have succeeded, we may be able to come back to speak to the Levad." Dareth Gann nodded. They made their camp a little to the north of the town, and the next day carried on to the oak grove. They rode to the edge of the oak grove and dismounted. There was no sign of life. "What now?" asked Dareth Gann. "Shall we go in and seek him out?" "Not immediately. We'll camp here. If he does not come out to us soon, then we may go into the grove. But I, for one, would not like to go uninvited into a druid's grove." They made their campfire and they had made their campfire and eat. Wow. They made their campfire and had eaten. Night was falling, and still Corinus had not appeared. By this time, Haram himself was becoming restless. Why are seers so vague in their prophecies? He spoke only of the oak grove and the druid, not about how to approach him if he remained hiding. For all that, the seer only spoke of a grove of trees and a druid. Can we be certain that this grove was and this druid was what that he was speaking of? Haram grimaced. "Don't say such things. Reason says that since it was Corinus who connected with our first encounter with the god of lies, it ought to be he whom the seer referred. Even if it is not, probably he can direct us more certainly." They sat in silence for a time then. After an hour or so, Gann looked up and exclaimed, "Haram, look!" When Haram looked up, Corinus was standing there, just on the edge of the firelight. "Welcome, Haram. And a good evening to you as well, Corinus. Though, when you hear why we have come, you may withdraw your welcome." "As to that, I already know why you have come. And don't look so surprised. Do you not remember the very first time you passed this way and camped here? I knew then who was pursuing you, and I know why you are here now." "Then will you help us?" "Yes, with what help I am able to give. This fight will not be the same sort of fight, though." "It will not?" "Oh, no, not at all. Now, let me make the circle around your campfire, and I will come back to tell you what I know or suspect." So Haram mounting impatience, as the druid walked the three circles around the campfire. That done, he returned. "In fact, I know little more about the matter than you do, though I have guessed some things which you have not thought of. Taroha plans his revenge on you, and has recovered the girl in order to work that revenge. He has drawn you here because he wishes me to be involved in the matter as well. You will recall that I defied him the last time as well. But what has clearly not occurred to you is that he may not use the same means as he did before. The circles will protect us against him and against the creatures he brings with him. But he has other servants, ordinary human beings of this world, who do his will, and they will be able to cross these barriers with only little difficulty." What a fool I was then! Boreth offered to accompany me, but I rejected his help for fear the task would be too dangerous for him. I ought to have brought him along and anyone else who would come. Corinna smiled slightly. Do not fret just yet, Harem. Though I usually stay quietly in my grove, I'm not so feeble in a fight as all that. We may. At that moment there was a sudden humming and a feeling of oppressive heat. A moment later a pinpoint of light showed in the air, a light which expanded into a large roiling ball. Then the god of lies was once more before them. In one huge hand he carried Teriel, still dressed as she had been when Harem last saw her. Her head was slumped forward. She appeared to be unconscious. So, he said, smiling wickedly, you are here again, but this time you are here at my request, and this time I have the meal it means to deal with you. He waved one hand, tracing a firing arc above his head. There was a sound of movement from out beyond the firelight. Suddenly, the circle was surrounded by armed warriors. Leading the whole group was Merritt. Dun dun dun! Okay. Well, well, okay. We're now on to the last chapter, guys. And, okay, there is not even, there's 7 pages left. Buckle up, everybody. It's the last chapter. Chapter 32. Even as he looked at Merritt, Harem felt in his heart that this was no great surprise. Merritt looked at him, saluting with his sword, and smirked. So we meet again, Harem. We meet again. I cannot say I approve of the company you keep. Merritt shrugged. I knew you were hunting me, and I knew some time we must face each other. So I found allies. You thought I was hunting you? So innocent he is. In every town in Eridare, I would hear the harem of the grim faces was seeking word of me. Will you deny that? No, I will not deny that. But I sought word of you only as a friend seeks word of a friend from whom he has parted. I had no ill will against you, Merritt. So you say now. What if you find me some time when I'm all alone? Besides which, I feel kindly disposed to me if I do not carry out my orders. He glanced back over his shoulder at the place where Draha stood waiting. He looked back at Harem and raised his sword, preparing to give the command. Dun, 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 to attack. Harem dropped his hand to his sword, and his hand bumped against the elf horn. If there were a time where he needed assistance from elves, this was the time indeed. He brought the horn to his lips and blew, even as the warriors surged forward. The horn sounded a high, sweet, wild call, the noise as of a storm roaring through the trees, of surf crashing on a rocky beach. There were all sounds of summer. There were wild winds of winter blowing. There was a low, warlike chanting, all in that moment the horn sounded. And at the call of the horn, Merritt and his company stopped for a moment. Just as they decided that the horn was no strange and deadly spell, there was an answering horn call from beyond the firelight. And with that horn call came 24 armed elves, ready for battle. Merritt looked around, then looked back at Harem. He was smiling again, the same wicked smirk. So Harem of the Grim Visage has allies of his own? Well, so be it. Let us try which of the two of us is the Oh my gosh. Let us try which of the two of us is the better. He lunged forward. Heron parried that lunge easily, then struck in turn. Merritt parried and slashed, a hard blow which jarred Heron's arm when he halted it with his own blade. Merritt was wearing the elven gauntlets that gave him extra strength, and Heron had to remember not to allow Merritt to strike his sword square on the blade, for fear it would break or be knocked from his hand. So they fenced. He also discovered that Merritt was not his equal in swordplay. Of course, using the gauntlets, he would usually overwhelm his opponent. But Heron was a little surprised that he had not mastered his sword any better than he had, or any sword any better than he had. He remembered Merritt's trick the night they had arm wrestled for the right to join Saradin. Perhaps Merritt had never properly learned to use the sword, depending on tricks, always depending on tricks to win. Heron fought with all the skill he possessed, slipping Merritt's blows off to one side or the other. With that necessity, his own swordplay was handicapped. But as the fight went on, Merritt used less and less skill, concentrating on hammer blows intended to smash through Heron's guard. Such blows occasionally put Merritt off balance, but he always recovered quickly enough to avoid a return blow from Heron. Again he struck, a slashing blow at the crown of Heron's head, and again Heron slipped it along his own blade, directing it toward the ground on his right. This time, Merritt's blade had actually touched the dirt, while Heron's sword moved in a stroke that had been drilled into him by his various teachers. The circle movement of the parry continued in front of his legs and up to waist height, from where he had launched a backhand stroke at Merritt's right side, still exposed from his own blow. Merritt jumped back, but the tip of Heron's sword caught him, swinging him around and dropping him to the ground. His sword fell from his hand and he did not move. Heron turned his attention to the battle around him. The rest of Merritt's warriors were either dead or fleeing, and the elves were gathering around Heron and his group. He turned to look at Drauha, in case the god of lies might be planning some other attack. What he saw stunned him. Two terribly bright figures, one male and one female, were facing the god of lies, swords in hand. A moment later, the male figure and the god of lies had disappeared. The female figure stooped, then turned towards Haram and the others. Though he had been continually watching, he had no memory of her having sheathed her sword, but she was now carrying Teriel in her arms. Haram dropped to his knees as she approached, looking down at the ground in front of him. A gentle voice spoke above him. "Rise, Haram, and look up." He did so, and gazed at the bright vision of the ever-young goddess Tran. She smiled at him. "Here, take your young friend. She is sleeping, and will wake from that sleep refreshed and well." Haram tried to speak, but his mouth was too dry. After a moment, he managed to croak. "What of Drauha?" "Drauha will not bother you again. From time to time, he may wish to send his people to hunt you, but if we hear of it, if we hear of it, we shall deal with him again. Have no fear of him." "Thank you, lady." Again came the smile. It was time. Drauha was beginning to interfere too much, to try to make himself too powerful. We were forced to take notice. "You have rescued us." "Mostly you've rescued yourselves. Farewell, Haram." She vanished. Haram looked around again. The elves were standing round, watching him. "I thank you for your timely arrival, friends." One of them smiled at him and answered. "The horn was sounded, and we were the nearest. It is our joy to have helped to repay the debt. If you ever have an opportunity to speak to Kith Wolden, express my gratitude." "We will. Do you need any further assistance?" Haram looked around. Gareth Gann was standing, leaning on his sword, with several dead around him. He was unwounded, as was Corenus, who stood quietly with his hands in his sleeves. No, I think not. Then we shall take our leave. Farewell to you, Haram with a grim visage. Farewell to all of you. As the elves trooped off into the night, Haram went down on one knee beside Merritt. Merritt was still breathing, but the wound was grievous. He would not last much longer. His eyes opened. So, Haram, you are better than I. So it would be up here. Merritt, Merritt, you need not have done this. Truly, I had no grudge against you. Truly? No, I suppose you did not. But I have done many foolish things in my life, and I suppose the last of them has killed me. Haram, I'm sorry. For what? For all of the things I have done to you. Would you do one thing for me? If I can. Go tell my father. Tell him I am dead. Tell him. Tell him that my last thoughts were of him. I will. Thank you, Haram. You were always a good friend. Suddenly he was dead. Wait, that's that's a poor way to phrase that. Uh, wow. Okay, hold on here. There we go. Let's try that again. Thank you, Haram. You are always a good friend. Merrick closed his eyes, and Haram knew that he was dead. Haram continued to kneel there, and tears began to fill his eyes. In the morning, Haram coaxed a fire out of the embers of the previous night, then looked around at his companions. Dareth Gann was still sleeping, but sleeping lightly. Teriel was beginning to awake, and Corenus was watching him. Many thanks to you, Corenus. No need to thank me. You handled the situation very well. Me? I blew a horn, and called the elves. I fought and killed the man who'd been my best friend. There ought to have been a better way to manage things. You've helped me. Corenus laughed and then looked at Haram. Then at Haram's. Wow. Corenus laughed. Then at Haram's look said, "Your pardon, but the first time I had no intention of helping you. I wished only to save my grove from whatever the wrath the god of lies might have unleashed on you against you. I had hoped to convince you to move along, but you would not. Therefore, I had to help you and keep the god distracted from my grove." Hiram said again, "For whatever reason you have helped me, I thank you again. And I will take my leave of you, Hiram, wishing you well in whatever you do from this time. Thank you." Hiram sat back and watched the other two. When they were fully awake, he must discuss plans with them. Teriel might or might not wish to visit her father, since they were very near to her home. Gareth Gann might come with him or go off by himself, since it appeared that Korah's prophecy had been fulfilled. As for himself, he must ride to Ifan Sor to tell Merritt's father how his son had died. Bum, bum, bum. Okay. And that's the end of that. However, okay, so other thing. That's the end of this story. So there is a follow-up story, and I am planning on reading that in March. So I'm going to take a break for now. Thanks everybody who's tuned in. Thank you for everybody all the new subscribers. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. It means a lot to me. Like I said, I'm going to be taking a break for a month. I might pop in here and there to say hi, but for the most part, I'm going to be getting ready to publish. And then once I'm getting everything ready, once I start getting proofs, I'll start showing you that while I'm doing the other stories as well. But I have a lot more stories to tell you guys. So bear with me while I take this break. It's much needed because it's a lot to be streaming every night for a month time. It's a lot. I love the time I spend though, and these stories are just so much fun to be able to speak out loud, and they really helps me to when I do tell the story, it helps me to be able to to listen and uh, just basically listen for any errors that are going on in the story, and also be able to like work out some structural issues as well. So that's really, really helpful. And I give you guys a story. So, I mean, I hope you guys enjoyed the story. Feel free just to, like, let me know if you like it. If you have suggestions that might be able to help. Like, I'm basically just reading the story. So it's that. Um, but if there's something that, if there's something I can do to make it more fun, I guess, or I don't know, or I don't really know. You have anything, suggestions, comments, that sort of thing, just feel free to like spout them out to me and I will see what I can do. Maybe? I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. Um, but yeah, in the meantime, I'm just gonna keep on rambling on a bit because that was just two chapters, but like I said, the first chapter was really, really meaty. So yeah, theoretically a pacing thing, but it's fine. I'm just gonna leave it as is. It's just a longer chapter, but it's kind of I like the way it all ramped up. Um, yeah, I kind of wish Teriel had more of a, but this wasn't about Teriel. This was about Harem, so it's kind of interesting. I liked how everything unfolded. But yeah, I'm also really excited. Okay, not gonna lie, because there is a sequel to this book. Okay, and I really want to find out what happens next in the book because oh my goodness, that was fun. I liked it because it seemed fun to me. And it like and the funny part is about that whole all that bargaining that was going on. When I was little, I used to bargain the crap out of things when we were like when I was buying things. I would bargain for the best price. So this bargaining, I think, may have some influence from me when I was little, and this may have influenced the story. So yeah. Anyway, yeah. So thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for liking, and let other people know about this show. And I'll be back in March. Um, and like I said, I might do some like random streams throughout February. We'll see, because I definitely need a bit of a break. But also, I need to get this book edited, and I need to get this map. Let me make sure I'm putting it right side up. Yeah, this map. This map needs to be drawn. So both those are my goals, and I will let you know how they go. I might, what I might just do? I might just like post some stuff, like, or do some like streams as I'm drawing the map and stuff. I might do some of that, but it won't be me talking. I'll just kind of be silent or music in the background while I draw stuff. It's kind of the best of all worlds because I used to do some drawings on here, some live drawings as well. So that might be a thing I do. Sure. Anyway, I'm rambling now, and it's time for me to go get some dinner. But I will talk to you all again. If not sooner, I will definitely talk to you on March 1st. Wait, will I talk to you on March 1st? I don't know what the calendar looks like. Hold on. Let me see if I'm lying to you or not. Because it would be funny if like because it won't be on a weekend. So let me just okay, hold on. Yeah, March is on a Friday. So March 1st is on a Friday. So I'm probably gonna actually start that on well no, I'll start it on the Friday. Yeah, we'll kick off on a Friday. So yeah, that is a thing that's happening. So I'll talk to you on March 1st. Everyone, uh, have a great night. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bye.